Alright, hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about how to blog. So we're actually going to start by looking at a blog that a local blogger who's a very good friend of mine wrote about coronavirus when this first started becoming kind of a stay-at-home issue. She writes about a lot of things that are going on in her life, but when she had to stop working at the yoga studio, and she was kind of getting scared because she's pregnant, she sat down and wrote this piece that I want to go with you today because I feel like it's really relevant to how a lot of us were feeling when this first started. Great, so her blog is called Write a Mandy. This is going to be a good example for our own blogs that we're going to be writing. On her blog, she gets to have this really neat header. You're going to get to customize parts of your blog, which we'll talk about later. She also chose an image of Baltimore, which is where we both live right now, as her background, because that's a big part of her identity. So think about what the imagery, the design, the title, what those things are communicating to your readers. All right, her blog post is called, which is kind of hard to see here, but Until Now Becomes a Was, which is a really interesting title to start with because she's playing with the her verb tense here, and starting with an interesting word. This is a title I've never seen before, but it also gives me the idea that this is going to be like, here are my thoughts until the things that we're going through right now become part of our history. So I can kind of get an idea this might be about coronavirus just because I know what's going on right now, but it's piquing my curiosity. All right, so here she has, which is really great, the date that she published it and her name. You're going to have those features too on yours. And that's important because when we're reading things online, we want to make sure that they're relevant and we put the date that they were written in context of what was happening. So in case you forgot, March 13th was our last day of school, 14th, 15th, 16th. This was the Monday after our after school's closed, and Amanda, who wrote this post, she's right here, she's also a teacher. So she's also writing from the perspective of being home right now. Well, COVID-19, and then let's not forget that she included an image to start her blog, which is an option that you'll have. This is, again, giving me a good idea that this is going to be about coronavirus because she's starting with kind of like a Zoom or Google Hangouts, FaceTime conversation. So that's what the conversations that a lot of us are having right now are. So yeah, again, giving context, but it's also kind of a cute image to start us off. Well, COVID-19, you've created an interesting world for us here. Or perhaps in many, many small ways over time, we've created it ourselves. So what's really interesting about her first line is that she's writing to COVID-19, which is an awesome, interesting way to start a blog because I have not yet seen any piece of writing that's been written to the coronavirus, instead of just starting with an interesting sentence about coronavirus. And then the second sentence here is giving me, again, something to think about, like, or maybe it's a situation we created ourselves. And in my mind, I'm already going through a bunch of things that have happened so far that have created the situation we're in. And Amanda has not needed to go through and tell us everything that's happened. She's just suggesting it. Every single email list I have ever joined or company I've ever purchased a product from has sent me its own coronavirus plan. I'm sure this is the same for everyone. It definitely was the same for me. They could have just gotten together on a conference call and just used one template. From the Baltimore chef shop to Tom's Shoes to Wolf Trap concert venue, back on my feet, About Faces Day Spa, Donors Choose, yoga studios that I visited once, a restaurant we never went back to, and on to places I don't have any idea how I got in their email lists. They say, carefully watching this evolving situation, given the current circumstances and abundance of caution, to do our part to protect our community, your safety is our number one priority, continue to closely monitor information. So what's also cool about blogs is that you get an opportunity to bullet point. She's also not using correct grammar here, which is in some ways fine. Like, these are not complete sentences, they're fragments, but she's getting across her her point here in a way that's very clear. So she's not accidentally using bad grammar because she doesn't know how to use grammar. In fact, Amanda was for a long time an English teacher, but she's breaking them off into these chunks to really give us an idea of like, oh my gosh, yeah, I totally know. I've also gotten all these random emails from a bunch of different places. So just 2 things to notice. Of course, the messaging is consistent. What else is there to say? We can't have nuance in something that is so new and utterly unprecedented. Everyone is entering this moment thinking, what in the actual blank? Now notice here too that Amanda did not choose to use an expletive, and neither should you. Even though a blog is more conversational and informal, you should not be using any inappropriate language in your blog because this is a school project and you want to keep it school appropriate and follow all of our district guidelines. I found that coronavirus limitations come in waves of acceptance unless you're a dingbat and still chugging Coronas like this is funny. If you start out thinking that certain aspects of of your life will remain the same, you gradually become more accepting of your new isolated existence, just like the NCAA tournament. First, I was teaching yoga with hands-on assists, but not giving neck rubs. Then I announced that I would stop giving the assists and walked the perimeters of the room like I was trying to avoid a security camera. And finally, I told both gyms I had to stop teaching after I read this. And here, wherever you see that blue writing, she's providing a link. Now in this video, you can't click on these links, but I already did for you. And these links are providing us more information about whatever she's talking about. So here she's referencing the fact that a newborn baby got coronavirus, which is something that Amanda's thinking about as a pregnant blogger, and yoga teacher, as we see here. But she's also giving us, she's not explaining entire other articles. She's not summarizing them like we would in a literary analysis essay or in an informational writing piece or a research project. She's referencing them, and then if you want to learn more and know what she's talking about, you can click on them. So this is a unique way of providing other sources, showing that you've done your research, you know what you're talking about, but you're not over-explaining it for your reader. You're just referencing it and then moving on, and then they have the option to click on it and see what you're talking about. The next day, March 16th, Governor Horgan announced that restaurants, bars, and gyms would be closed. So here she's kind of giving us a summary of her situation that's probably similar to our own, but it's also giving some context of what she's about to say, which is good because you want to be pretty specific. Notice that she hasn't just said like, wow, everything's really new and interesting, and like, wow, it just seems like nothing's really going to be the same, and I'm really tired of being inside. She's giving like all the specific companies she's gotten emails from. She's giving specific things that have changed. She's giving specific ways that her own like career has been impacted. And then she's going into what specifically the governor said. So again, the more specific you are in your writing, the easier it's going to be to read, the more powerful it's going to be, and the more interesting it's going to be, because if you're too vague, nobody's going to know what you're talking about, and they're not going to want to keep reading. With Chaz, who is Amanda's husband, working for MEMA, my slow, independent days are a grave contrast to his 7-day work week of 10-hour shifts, which are topped off with him coming home to take calls, email, and pace. And MEMA, for those of you who don't know, is the Maryland Emergency Management group. So her husband's the one who's doing all of the emergency management right now in the state. He's not the only one, but he's in charge of a lot of important things in terms of emergency management, which is what she's referencing in this paragraph. Sitting down to watch the governor's press conferences, always on Chaz's encouragement, means catching the tail end of whatever TV is before the breaking news. And then here, again, she's kind of putting our grammar rules to the wind. She's using all capitals as emphasis. That is fine, because we're doing something a little bit different here than what we're used to. I've seen how far Rob Lowe has fallen all the way to 911 Lone Star. And why is the lead singer of the Goo Goo Dolls' hair that? Daytime game shows are a true horror, nevertheless, Drew Carey persists. Okay, so here we've got some humor, which she's bringing by, again, being specific with her references. And then that's making us laugh because she's like poking fun at people. Maybe she's exaggerating a little bit, but yet we probably empathize with her with the TV that we're seeing. Then there's the commercials. You need a lawyer, you need a new job, you need car insurance, but what you need? Good credit. Again, pretty funny, especially for people who have been watching a lot of commercials. We know that a lot of the commercials are telling us that, you can get a car with, without them checking your credit or, loans or whatever. So kind of building on the knowledge that she knows that other people who are reading her post probably have. I've heard lots of comparisons. I think it's the natural thing to do when a society is just grasping for meaning by connecting with an existing memory. One is to World War II, but those have been contrasts, really. Thank goodness this isn't that. We're not at war. Many of us aren't rationing food, though it's really important to remember that some are. We aren't fearing for our lives or being persecuted, not sailing across an ocean to be turned away. Another is to H1N1, which doesn't really work. All I remember about that is getting a vaccine. Whim, bam, boom, we were okay. Again, too, notice that Amanda's paragraphs kind of vary in length, and she had nothing else to say about H1N1. She moved on to another comparison. She was talking about a new topic, though, so she changed paragraph. That is fine. The comparison that lands the most is to the 1918 flu pandemic. More aptly, it should be called the 1918 and 1919 flu pandemic. Estimates are that it killed between 20 to 40 million people. Read the number again. Have you ever heard this sung in a child's voice? So I also noticed that she's talking a lot to the audience. She's assuming that we know some things, like up here with the commercials. She's telling us what to do, and she's explaining some things that we might not have already known. So Amanda's really considering our audience with these blog posts, thinking about what do they know, what don't they know, what can I joke about, what do I have to explain. That's important when you're posting. I had a little bird, its name was Enza. I opened the window and influenza. It'll haunt your dreams. So again, we've got a link here probably to the song so that the reader can hear it instead of just reading it. Which again, she's referencing something. She needs to give it credit. She does that by linking it. The 1918 flu depressed the average lifespan in the U.S. by 10 years, infecting 28% of Americans and killing almost 700,000 of them. You want to feel bolstered and justified in social distancing? Read more about it. In particular, the comparison between St. Louis's handling and Philly's is fascinating and pertinent. I heard today on NPR that we, as a nation right now, are more 1918 Philly than 1918 St. Louis. So this makes me feel like Amanda knows what she's talking about. She's not just referencing these things because she saw some Instagram post that mentioned some statistic about 1918 flu, but she did her research and she's providing some context for what her position is on what's happening right now. My plan is to use my goal sheet to guide my days. Feel free to click file and make a copy and create your own. Day one, it went well. Here, she's saying what particularly she's doing about the issue. Again, just talking about what this pandemic has meant for her. And then she's linking it so even her readers can use the goal sheet as well. Goals include working on my girls' reflections and giving them feedback, FaceTiming, registering to absentee vote. She's providing a link so others can do the same. Completing the U.S. Census, giving a link so others can do the same. Some furniture roulette to begin to prepare for our nursery. Daily indoor workouts, writing, baking, crafts, gardening, meditation, and more. Now, this could have been maybe an interesting blog post by itself, or she could have particularly, what would have been, I would like to see is like, what has Amanda's baking journey been like since she's been at home? Or how is gardening going for her? Have there been any mishaps? Have there been any expectations that have been met? Like, she can make each one of these an adventure in a post by itself, but that's not what this whole blog post is about. She's not going off kilter, so she's just mentioning them and then returning back to what this big issue has meant for her. I don't have any real answers, obviously. Sometimes I've used this blog as my soapbox, my megaphone, my accountability method. Now, these three things that she's saying are really great purposes for a blog. Your soapbox, where you feel strongly about an issue and you shout that issue out to the world. My megaphone, again, kind of like a soapbox, but it's just amplifying the voice that she already has. And her accountability method. If you want to be a writer, then you need to put your writing out there so that other people you can have an accountability system. So that, if other people are expecting you to write, then you're more likely to write. If people are expecting you to meet them for a workout, then you're more likely to work out. It's the same thing. Right now, it's my binoculars and my therapist. Again, really great reasons for blogging or writing in any form. Because of the uniqueness of this time, I think we can all benefit from some writing to process, to remember, and to remind ourselves of what this was like. Again, this is the reason I really wanted to do this assignment with you all, is because I think that these are very strong reasons to write right now. To process what's happening to us, to remember later what's happening to us, and then so later we can look back on this and kind of use this as a historic document of what life was like during the pandemic. And yes, eventually someday it will be a was. Now, she also includes 2 more links here to other friends' blog posts, also about the coronavirus and what it's like staying at home, which is great because if you're interested in what she's saying, here's some more things to read. So, you want to write a blog post, but you don't know what you would like to write about. I've been reading a book called Writing for Your Life, A Guide and Companion to the Inner Worlds by Deena Metzger, Deenametzger. She gives a valuable writing exercise that might just be a good starting point if you don't know really where to start. So keeping a journal isn't so difficult. Beginning to keep it is the challenge. It has always been easy for me to keep a travel journal. When I'm in a foreign place, I appreciate the journal's familiar presence. It is the close friend to whom I can confide everything and convey my experience. One way to start a regular journal is to imagine that you are traveling. For the first few weeks, follow the sequence. Imagine that your daily life is occurring in a foreign country. Carry a journal with you wherever you go and write in it whenever you have a moment, at the beginning or end of the day, on line at a supermarket, waiting for transportation, in a restaurant, and so on. Now, obviously, we can't do some of those things, but some of them you can. Write anything and everything, snatches of conversations, observations, concerns, dreams, plans, lines of poems, letters, newspaper headlines. Allow yourself to record anything and everything without judging its appropriateness or meaning. As this becomes comfortable, expand the journal by adding emotional responses and observations. Enter into dialogue with the things that you've seen and heard. So first you're just writing everything that you see, hear, experience. Then, after you're done doing that, start adding your how you're feeling about those things. Next, experiment with thinking in the journal, with recording ideas and exploring them. Finally, consider the journal as a place where beginning fictions or snatches of poems may not only be recorded, but explored and developed. If you're interested in doing a fiction blog, that's fine too, although I'm going to be focusing on informational blogs for now because I do think that writing about our current experiences is important. If we imagine that our daily life is occurring in a foreign country, we will be like travelers, exceedingly attentive to every detail, curious about the meaning of everything, and enthusiastic about experience, no matter what its quality. So this would be a really good way of looking at all of our stuck-at-home experiences if we're thinking about it like we're in an Airbnb in another exotic place. At the end of your trip, you'll be able to look back over the journal to discover what you've seen, what has obsessed and fascinated you, and what, if anything, you wish to make of it. All right, if you're done with that, she's got one more suggestion. Now later, tomorrow or next week, wherever you are, sitting at your desk at the computer or on a park bench with the small notebook you always carry, or in a cafe or before the fire or on a train, recall these images. Select one or a few. What engages you about them? You can make a poem of them. You can take the phrase or the image, explore it, go deeper, bore, go into the heart of it. Cut away everything extraneous. Repeat what is essential. Find the associations. Leap from one understanding to another. Beware of the rhythm. Rhythm wants to be repeated. Find the music of the words. Sing. So take one specific thing that you've experienced in your journal or in this blog post and then make that the focus. Really hone in on it. Go into the heart of it. And then cut away everything else. So now that you've got brainstorming, we've seen an example. There are lots more examples you can look at online. I'm going to be including a link as part of your assignment to a blog. So it's going to bring you to this page. However, you can't do anything from here. It looks like you could start posting, but you can't. You need to log in. But before you log in, I want you to click this join button. So when you go to the link, this is the page you're going to see. Then you're going to hit join. Once you hit that button, it's going to bring up a little box. You're going to enter this code, which is going to be on Google Classroom, but it's BR9QFY7. That will bring you to my class. Now, when you click that, it's going to ask you to sign up as a student. Please sign up with your PGCPS email. Now, you can sign into Clever because you have a Clever. I don't know if you've used that for any other classes, but PGCPS does give you that. However, it's going to be a little more complicated than if you click this button and enter your PGCPS email. Please do not use your personal email to sign in. So next, it gives you the same screen, but now you've got some more options. So once you get to this screen, now you can click this new post button up top in the top right corner of the screen. Once you click that, you're going to be able to create your first blog post. Now it's going to bring you to a page that looks like this. This is the top of the page. This is where you get to be experimental. So you can add a header image. It 150% needs to be school appropriate. Otherwise, I have to report you and we have to go through all these very unfortunate and annoying steps because you broke some PGCPS rules. But you can use one of their stock images or you can upload your own. Again, think about what it's communicating to the world and how that relates to what you're going to be talking about in your blog post. You're going to enter a title, make sure it's something interesting and relevant to what you're talking about. And then it's going to give you a box to type in. There's tons of stuff you can play with here. You can play with font. You just want to make sure it's readable. You can get rid of any formatting on the font. That's what that means. You can create the bulleted list or a numbered list. You want to be careful with using centered or right aligned. Those would be good if you are like writing a poem, but otherwise you want to try and keep it left aligned. This is undo and this is redo. I highly recommend that you link to some other articles for students to read. Again, that needs to be school appropriate. And if you're creating an image or you want to link to some sort of Google Doc or file that you're going to be referencing in your blog, then there are those tools as well. And then you're typing into this box here. You have opportunities to change your background color, the texture, the title fonts, and then the post fonts. So a lot of opportunities here to play around and make this your own. And just some final tips here about how to write a blog post. Step 1, make sure that you choose a topic, create an outline, conduct research, and check facts. In my last group of lessons that I sent out last week, we went over the importance of checking for fake news. So do not reference anything that is not substantiated. Craft a headline that is both informative and will capture readers' attentions. Then write your post, either writing a draft in a single session or gradually word on parts of it. Interesting wording there. But you can gradually add to it or write it all at once. Step 5, use links to reference your research on the topic. This is like citing your sources and not only gives people who are interested further reading, but also makes you a more persuasive writer. It shows you know what you're talking about. Yeah, and then remember too, I shouldn't have to say, but if you take information from another source, it must be cited, and you cannot take huge chunks from another source or else you're just republishing it, and that's also plagiarism. So any plagiarism will result in a 0 and no opportunity for a retake. Step 5, edit your blog post. Please do this. A lot of you are sending me, even in our little discussion boards online, your writing is coming out very nonsensical and it's making you look a lot less smart than you are. Go back and make sure that everything is edited. Avoid repetition. Read your post aloud to check its flow. Have someone else read it and provide feedback. Keep sentences and paragraphs short, although they should be varied. You don't necessarily need to be a perfectionist on a blog. And don't be afraid to cut out text or adapt your writing last minute. Notes, like we talked about in Amanda's blog, shorter paragraphs are okay. Experiment with different fonts. Just make sure that it's readable. You can use bulleted lists, and your first sentence should grab your reader's attention. Now, if you still have questions about this, about how to write a blog post, or Ms. Smith, I don't know what to write about, use models and use your resources. So models means that you are looking at other blogs that are being published and you are using those as inspiration for yourself. If you love sports, there are tons of sports blogs out there to help you. If you are really interested in DIY, then there are a lot of blogs out there that help you make your own slime and become an entrepreneur, and use those things to help you write yours. And then if you're like, I still don't know what to write about, there are brainstorming websites. So type into Google blog brainstorming or writing brainstorming topics, and they will give you thousands of possible topics for you to write about. Your blog can be informational, it can be persuasive, it can be fictional, it can be poetry. It's just your voice that's out there in the world, and it's being published for our class to see. All right, if you have any questions, as always, hit me up. Bye.